Hello everyone, welcome to Storytime with Venus. Okay, so about 5 months ago, it was last September, I somehow got yanked back into the DarkwingDuck fandom, mostly because of the new DuckTales reboot, which is going to have a DarkwingDuck cameo at some point. And I somehow wound up on ff.net looking at fanfiction, like I do. And I found this fanfiction series called Geronimo from RebellingStagnation. And at the time there were 6 installments, now there's 8. And so I read the first one, and then dove right into the second, and then right into the third, and wound up pulling an all-dayer and an all-nighter to finish the whole thing. And then I wound up doing this piece from the 6th installment, I Bet Your Life. I believe it's from chapter 3. And I posted it on Tumblr, and Rebelling loved it. She's been singing my praises for months now. But I always kind of felt a little bit like I shortchanged her a little, because I'm a digital artist. I've only done maybe 6 or 7 color pencil pieces ever. So, I mean, I'm proud of this. This is the best I am capable of as far as color pencils go, but I am capable of better digitally. So it's like she almost got kind of an experimental piece instead of the best that I'm capable of. So when she posted installment 7, there was this one scene, and it's not like a particularly actiony scene, it's just 2 characters in an elevator. But for whatever reason, I could just see it so perfectly in my head. Like, the poses, the expressions, I could just see it like a frame grab in my head. And I was like, ooh, I have to. And this time I'll do it digitally and she'll get the full package. So that's what I did, and that's what you're gonna see. And this was actually the video I was intending on doing 2 weeks ago. But I wound up with so much footage, I didn't know if I wanted to cut everything down into one video or split it into 2. Because I really don't want to have videos longer than a half hour. I just feel like that's too much to expect you guys to sit through. So this is going to be a 2-parter. This is going to be the sketch and the line art. And then in 2 weeks I'll post the rest of it. So let's get to it. Okay, so first I want to explain a little bit about the fic itself, so that there's a little bit of context here. Not going to get too spoilery, because, you should read it. So, the basic idea for the series is it's several years in the future. Gosselin's an adult, and she's sort of partnered with Negaduck to co-run the Negaverse. And I say sort of partnered because she's not a villain. She has a very close relationship with Negaduck, but she hasn't, gone dark side or anything. She's doing the whole quiverwing quack thing full time, super competent, very awesome. Nothing bad's happened between her and Darkwing. They're still super close. She hasn't turned against him. She's just kind of pulled towards Negaduck the same way Darkwing was pulled towards Gosselin in the episode Life, the Negaverse, and Everything. And just like how he saw elements of his daughter in Gosselin, adult Gosselin sees elements of her father in Negaduck. Which makes so much sense, I'm surprised it's not a bigger thing in the fandom. And Negaduck likes her kind of in spite of himself. Like, it'd be easier if he didn't, but he can't quite help it. Which also makes tons of sense because Darkwing and Negaduck are the same person, but from 2 different universes. And if regular Darkwing was pulled towards Gosselin enough to want to adopt her in the first place, it makes sense why Negaduck would have that same kind of pull towards her. And the whole first installment is about them, coming to terms with the fact that they kind of like each other, even though they shouldn't. Not in a ship way, at all, but in a pseudo father-daughter kind of way. Darkwing and Negaduck are still arch enemies, so Gosselin's kind of conflicted there, and Negaduck just has trust issues, period. But they're good for each other, and the whole concept is great, and The way everything evolves is well handled, and it's just all around really well written, and I love it, so it gets fan art. Twice. Anyway, so clearly I'm drawing Max Goof here. He's the love interest, which is totally not spoilery, because he's introduced in chapter 1 of Living on a Prayer, and it's not even a will they, won't they thing, because they're flirting right off. It's a ship now, check Tumblr. We call it GoMax. I used references from an extremely goofy movie, which I got from this great website that I love called Disney Screen Caps. It has frame grabs from tons of animated movies, not just Disney ones either, so I get most of my references from there. Ooh, I should tell you about how this piece almost wasn't. So I spent several hours drawing Max. I had him perfect. Saved, finished for the night, because this was done over a period of several days. Anyway, so I come back the next day, went to open the file, and it's gone. It's all gone. I think I may have actually made a sound only dogs can hear. I did not want to redraw it. I was like, there's no way I can redraw him as good as I had him. His hand positioning took so long. No, don't make me redo this. I almost scrapped the whole thing. I hadn't told Rebelling I was doing it, so it's not like she'd be disappointed if I didn't. I could pretend like it never happened at all. And then I realized I'd recorded the whole thing. All I had to do was go back into my footage, take a few frame grabs, Photoshop them together, and I got them back. It'd all be on one layer rather than the 4 or 5 I usually have for sketches, but he'd be back. So I did, and it worked, and thank God, and I was able to continue on. And Max is hard to draw. He's such a skinny little guy, and I kept drawing him too broad and having to squish his body in. I gave him man proportions to start out with. In that stupid little messenger bag, I kept drawing it too small and having to resize it and then re-angle the perspective, and it took forever. And here's where I go back to basics and draw the skeleton I should have drawn to begin with. It's good to know where all your parts and pieces are supposed to go before you start adding details like I was. And if you want to know how I draw hands, I carve them out of the remains of my past mistakes. You would think drawing Gosselin would have been easier, given that the adult version of her is my own character design, and while her body was easier, her head very much was not. I couldn't get the size of her skull right for the life of me. She starts out looking like a bean. I had to trace over my own original drawing to get a reference of how far down her chin should be from her eye line, and it still took me a couple of tries to get it right. It's my own freaking design. And now she looks like a Ninja Turtle. I feel like I should explain Gosselin's expression here a bit. At this point in the sketch, I don't think it really reads quite the way I want it to. It turns out fine later, but at this point, it may kind of look like she's uncomfortable, like she's trapped in an elevator with some guy that's skeezing on her, and that's not what's happening. At all. At this point in the story, he doesn't know about her double life, and she's just coming off of 2 back-to-back traumas that she hasn't had time to deal with. She's got places she needs to be, and it just isn't the right time to be flirting with him. But she can't exactly tell him that, and she doesn't want to brush him off because she is actively interested in him. And then the whole encounter just ends up being super awkward, which is why the name of this piece is Awkward in the Elevator, because I have a way with words. I fought with her hair so much. I could have just left it down and called it a day, but I had my heart set on this ponytail with like little bang danglies that curled. But I don't actually know how to draw hair. I don't have a method unless you want to call flailing wildly with a pencil repeatedly until I can stand the way it looks, before I change my mind the next day, decide I hate it, and flail at it some more, a method. Even with references, hair physics is beyond me. Basically, if it's hair, and it looks good, and I drew it, it was an accident. Every time. Same with this over-the-shoulder ponytail. It was awful to start with. I did eventually figure it out, but God, it was bad at the start. But I was determined to have it. I don't even know why. It was just in my head, and I was just not gonna let it go. And this is exactly why I do everything on its own layer. I have the body how I like it on one layer, and then I'm free to mess up the hair as much as I want because it's on its own layer. Going back to Max, because like I said before, he's a real scrawny little guy. If I kept giving him man proportions, he's basically a walking stick with scrawny little legs, and I kept making him all like buff. Okay, so I'm going to actually skip ahead and only show you a portion of the line art phase. Since I don't have the self-confidence to go straight into line art after just like a single sketch layer and just make corrections as I ink, I clean up my sketches so much that I really don't change anything, so you would really only be watching me retrace what you've already just watched me draw, and that would be boring and would also add like 40 minutes of additional footage. So I'm just going to show you enough. If you watched my DuckTales video from 2 weeks ago, you already saw how I control Photoshop's tapered lines by overshooting and then erasing the extra. You can really see that on the hair here. You can't really control line weight with the pen tool. The thickest part is always the exact middle, and both ends taper equally, and sometimes that's great, but other times I really need only one end to taper, or for one end to be slightly less tapered, or I want the thickest part to be closer to where a shadow would be, so I have to fiddle with it. It's time consuming, but it looks the best, and I just don't have the manual dexterity to hand line anything with my hand trimmer. It was about this time I realized I'd seriously screwed a lot of this up. Max's elbow has a weird wiggle, his shoulder has a weird bulge, he's bow-legged, I'd forgotten his wrist, the strap on his shoulder bag isn't centered. I gave Gosselin Mondo crotch. I mean, seriously, look at that thing, how'd I miss that? Her left arm is way too long, her boobs are too high, and I decided I couldn't live with the mess I had made out of her over the shoulder ponytail. So I resketched the corrections and re-inked just those bits. Then finally, it was done. So that was part 1. Come back in 2 weeks for part 2. And then 2 weeks after that, I will be doing an acrylic painting of Lilo from Lilo and Stitch. So if you want to see that, subscribe, and I'll see you then. Bye!